Just how would you feel if you got into a club and you saw your pastor, a reverend sister, or your parent, let's say your dad, on a pole, strip dancing? Just how would you feel? Upset, shocked, disappointed? And why would you have such feelings? My name is Mukwe Fashakin, and for this series, we're going to be exploring boundaries. For today, we'll be discussing setting the limit. In recent times, largely on social media, the word boundaries has come up a lot. Somebody is breaking my boundaries. I've set my boundaries, you cannot cross. And it would seem as though the boundaries conversation only comes up in response to what somebody else has done. It's almost as if you are jailing the person in your own space. Why don't you explore boundaries in a different sense? See, you might want to sit with yourself and explore why you would feel offended if you saw your pastor, your reverend sister, or your dad in a strip club. Maybe you should ask yourself what you're doing in the strip club as well. But I'm going to attempt to help you resolve what you feel. Here is it. When your pastor, or when a man says he's a pastor, or a woman says he's a pastor, that particular utterance or that particular thing they said they are creates a boundary around them. You have a set of expectations for them and of them. They also, by defining themselves as a pastor, bounded themselves by certain perimeters. In essence, they set limit, which translates to being in a strip club. Pole dancing is out of boundaries for a pastor or a reverend sister, perhaps for your parent. It's going to shake something in you when you see those kind of three people in that setting doing that. It contravenes everything you expect them to uphold. Now, let's define setting the limit. Your boundary is not what you respond with when someone desecrates your space, then you throw them out. There's a place for that in boundaries, but that's not where it begins. It begins with setting the limit. Who am I? Who am not? Who am I not? I'm a pastor. What does that even mean? I'm Mukwe. What does that mean? What is allowed? What is permitted? This particular past winter, we had an unusual winter. It was called the El Nino winter. January, February was a bit warmer than expected, and we began to observe trees or some flowers trying to bud. There was a sense of panic because though we enjoyed the warmth, we were fearful of what could be if spring came in winter. I'm going to tell you what happened, which you probably experienced, but for those who didn't live in the winter areas of the world, I will just let you know. Just that same weekend, winter came back with all its fury, because by the boundaries the Creator has set for times and seasons, it was out of place for spring to come in February. So it was quite dramatic the way the winter came aggressively. We had to shut up because here in Canada, you just don't trust Canadian winter until the winter is actually past. If you think you're having it warm, you might be in for a rude surprise. So by the boundaries of the times and seasons, it was an incursion of space, a violation of order for spring to take effect in February. Now, how do you even know when someone is making an incursion into your space if you don't have boundaries around you? There is more for us to explore in this conversation, but I wanted to have a moment. What is a boundary for you? What are the limits for you? What do you permit yourself to do? What do you permit yourself to not do? Listen, God is all-powerful, is omnipotent, He can do all things, He can reverse orders. But He wouldn't answer some of our prayers because answering some of those prayers would change the order of the boundaries set in place, which are principles that govern our word. For example, if I'm praying to God, because I slept throughout the whole year or something. And now it's time for harvest, but I just got my seed to go sow. And I'm like, hey, you suspend things in heaven, suspend things on earth, make my plant grow. God didn't do that, because that prayer, for God to answer it, he has to violate so many boundaries, including that which makes him God. He's going to repent of his own word. He's going to alter the principle of seed time and harvest. He's going to be unjust to the people who have sowed in the right season. There are certain fruits and crops that humanity and animals expect certain periods of the year. They wouldn't get that because I want my prayers to be answered. So because even God has put himself in certain limits, some prayers cannot be answered. What limit have you set for yourself? The lesson today is that your boundaries are not things that you create in response to an external incursion or aggression. Your boundaries are landmarks set in place, immovable. We will discuss the place of flexibility in the future, but you've got to have the immovable stuff. Listen, if you did not have the perimeters around your property, what happens? Someone without a home could set up an encampment on your porch. I could park my car in your house because I have no parking space left. In the city of Toronto, parking is a problem. If you don't have perimeters around a fence, I could park there. You could have stray animals come in. You could have burglars come survey your house because why? You don't have any perimeter guarding you. Nothing says, this is my space. When you come into this space, these are the rules that follow. So what happens when you have a perimeter around your house? Anybody who wants to come in needs to come in on your own terms. In many instances, with your own permission. When you take responsibility for setting the limits, then you will acknowledge and realize that your boundaries or lack of boundaries and lack of consequences when your boundaries are violated is your responsibility. Let's explore this further some other time. Talk soon.